The Abstract is brought to you by SpotDraft, an end-to-end contract lifecycle management system that helps high-performing legal teams become 10 times more efficient. If you spend hours every week drafting and reviewing contracts, worrying about being blindsided by renewals, or if you just want to streamline your contracting processes, SpotDraft is the right solution for you. From creating and managing templates and workflows to tracking approvals, e-signing, and reporting via an AI-powered repository, SpotDraft helps you in every stage of your contracting. And because it should work where you work, it integrates with all the tools your business already uses. SpotDraft is the key that unlocks the potential of your legal team. Make your contracting easier today at SpotDraft.com.
Oh my gosh. Do we have time for me to write a book about that?
I'll buy it.
I mean, there's so many things I wish I had. I mean, you know, if you have the foresight of what you're going to learn over this long of a career, right? I would say that, you know, when you're in operations, you need to be able to scale. Mm-hmm. And I was very meticulous coming out of law firm life. Like I had to dot every I and cross every T.
Yeah.
When you're in operations, you can't focus on that. You have to focus on the big picture, which is what are the priorities for the business? How are we going to support our teams in order to keep up? And in order to do that, you need to not be editing every I and every T.
Right.
And so I think if I had known that, to be able to say like, okay, focus on the big things. Don't really kind of get in the weeds too far all the time. That probably would have helped me over the years.
That's great.
But I could probably come up with 100 more things if we had the time.
I think the first thing I would tell myself would be it's a concept now I call ATOP, which is at your own pace, right? Like, and it's, I mean, the thing that came to me. So everyone's running their race, right? And your job is to make sure you're finishing the race. Don't leave anything midway. If you finish first, that's great, but the job is to finish. And the analogy that I drew, and I was talking to one of my friends, was, you know, when someone comes and tells you, you know, I just ran a marathon, the question that you ask them is not, did you come first? The question you ask them is, oh man, that's awesome. What time did you finish in, right? Because, and when someone says I finished in 2 hours, the answer is mind blowing. And someone says 6 hours, I'm like, still mind blowing. Like, you know, finishing a marathon is a massive thing in and of itself. You don't have to finish it in 3 hours. So I think that someone would have, because when I was young, I was, you know, you have a checklist, you want to do this, accomplish X, Y, Z, you know, by certain time. And I think that for me was, I would tell myself that, you know, just relax. Things will happen at their own pace. Just keep doing what you're doing. The other thing for me personally was, and I'll tell 23-year-old me or like a younger me was, money is not the goal, right? Money is a great byproduct. It is not the goal. So I think that is something that I realized at some point fairly early on in life. So, I mean, a couple of years back, which I consider fairly early on because, you know, hopefully live till 60. But I think that was a massive moment of just clarity in life that, you know, this is not the goal. It's a good thing to have. There are a lot more important things you want to do in life, and that should be the goal. And once you start on something, finish that, or let other things happen to you on the side.
You know, I think the thing about being young and enjoying success when you're young, you know, whether it's like getting into a school you want to get into or getting a job you want to get into, is like, you sort of feel like things are always going to be linear. Like there's going to be this just trajectory that you're going to follow, and you're going to spend X amount of time doing one thing, and that's going to lead to the next thing and then the next thing. And what you can't account for and you can't appreciate until you live it is that the market, life, like all these things that are not really out of your control, they intervene. And you'll have lows, like I've talked about, like I've been laid off from jobs, like I've had struggles finding jobs. I've jumped into things that are at a stage where it's very unclear whether it's going to go anywhere. A lot of times, like only in like hindsight do you reflect on the fact that this is all part of like a journey and holistic and all that. In the moment, it's hard to do that. So again, if we're like doing a hypothetical where it's like, what could you tell your younger self?
Yeah.
Like I would say that those things are going to happen because they happen to everybody. I think the ways to deal with it is to, one thing wish I did more is like verbalize it more, talk through it more with people, use like at different points in my career, we didn't have things like LinkedIn or other outlets to be able to vent or talk about your point of view to more people. Like use those things. I think learn from the like things that didn't go the way you want and do your best to not have those things happen to you again. Take advice from people that have been there, reach out to people like cold. I mean, on LinkedIn, just write a thoughtful message. People will reply. And then I guess the last thing is just, it sounds really corny, but like just ultimately like kind of have this deep belief that like you're a good communicator, especially if you're a lawyer. I mean, you're generally a better communicator than most people in the room. You have foundational skills that you can rely on and will lead you to good things. You can have that as a North Star. And it sounds a little hokey, but I think you just have to have that faith. And that's like sort of what I think is impossible to really have at a junior part of your career. But a person that's been through it will tell you that that's really going to happen. And it's really important that you kind of keep your head up and keep moving forward.
Yeah, this is a great question. Definitely early on in my career, and perhaps even to this day, I thought that if I put my head down, I did the work well, I would be recognized and sort of rewarded for that. I've come to learn that that's only part of the battle, right?
Yeah.
There's, you have to have strong relationships with folks that can move the needle in your career. You have to do, for right or for wrong, and perhaps this isn't the right term for it, but you have to, do a little bit of self-promotion. I think, obviously not bragging. No one wants to hear that, but a bit of self-promotion. So I will say, earlier in my career, I didn't get a promotion that I felt I deserved, and when I asked about it, I was told the people that needed to approve the promotion didn't feel like they knew my work well enough. Again, I had assumed I only needed to do good work and my manager would sort of take care of the rest. And I initially felt that my manager hadn't pushed hard enough for me. That was wrong. I later learned that my manager actually went to bat for me. He tried. But the process, like many other things in-house, required buy-in from others. And so I realized it was on me to make sure that key people knew what I did and, more importantly, why it mattered, right? So no one really doubted the work I was doing was important, but they didn't necessarily appreciate my role and contributions, to that work. So I learned that if I didn't want my work to be that proverbial, tree that falls in the forest that no one hears, I needed to build better relationships with key people who could have that impact on my career and make sure they understood what I did. Now, that's a lot easier said than done, and it is something I work on. I try to work on, through every job, every day.
Yeah.
So it's something I have far from perfected, but it's at least something that I now recognize as again, in my view, important. And again, early in my career, it was just, I'm going to work, I'm going to bill the hours, I'm going to do the good work, I'm going to check all the footnotes, right? And that was certainly part of it, but that wasn't the whole picture. So that's something that I've definitely learned through the years.
I would say two things. One, it's a known fact, but it is, you gotta live through it to fully realize it, is that timing concept. It is, you cannot be, if you have again a new point of view or a new idea or something you want to build, you're by definition early. Like otherwise, if it's a common sense already, then it's not, there's nothing new there. So you're already coming with something new. So by definition, you are early to the market. The biggest important thing is like, how early are you? Are you early? Are you a year early, 3 years early, 10 years early, 20 years early, right? And people talk about product market fit. They talk about a bunch of things. I find all of them good for some things, but sometimes oversimplifying it to an operational level of what you kind of need to do. People talk to your customers early, but they don't talk about what you need to ask. And so I think, to me, that concept of, if you can try to focus on analyzing by talking to customers, by shipping early and fast stuff to, but what you're actually measuring is how far is your vision from the market is right now, and how long before this is going to be the norm. That would be a very helpful tool in your decision-making arsenal, is what I think.
That's great. Thanks for tuning in to Season 3 of The Abstract. Our guests span the globe, from the US to Europe to Asia, and job titles from general counsel to COO, executive recruiter to head of legal ops. Our guests are redefining what it means to have legal training and to be a part of the legal profession. That'll continue in Season 4, where we'll even have some folks on who are now CEOs or presidents of companies. Hope to see you next week when Season 4 of The Abstract drops across Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and on social media near you.